The academic advising panel, the second part of our symposium today, it's on the impact of advising, and I subtitle it Best Advice. We wanted to, the panel wanted to carry on the theme of optimism that Rebecca introduced as her keynote, and she really wanted to hit that as the theme she was interested in talking about, and I thought it made perfect sense to continue that theme into the panel session. And again, I said it before, I'll say it again, that comprehensive list of who we are that Rebecca put to us before, I thought that was quite astounding. I don't think I would have been able to think of half of those things of the type of breadth and depth that we represent as people and workers in this system. And she also talked about the miracle of the one-to-one, which advising represents. I know there's other contexts of the workshop and other things we do in resourcing, but it's really well and best represented, I think, by the one-to-one, which is still going. And Rebecca keeps using this word of the miracle of the one-to-one, and I think she's not far wrong on that, and she's very right with it, because certainly in Victoria, I'm sure all other states get the same thing. When students are progressing into academic higher ed institutions, they're always told you've got to be independent, you're on your own, people aren't going to help you as much. And then having spent the last 11 years in this job, I'm thinking, well, hang on, no, they do get a lot of support. We are there for them. This academic advising that we do is a great example of that. And that's why I wanted to bring a panel together, which consists of a couple of students, some advisors in different contexts, and an academic from Uni Melbourne. I'll introduce them now, and then I'll get them to talk a little bit about themselves and how they came to academic advising, and we'll also pose some questions to them from me, but there will be some Q&A time at the end. So if a question does come to you, maybe just hang on to it, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end, and we'll present these ideas to the panel. Our first panelist is Felicia Chioma Adikea. I hope I'm saying that right. And honours in anthropology at the University of Adelaide. She's currently undertaking that program. She's a student leader for the past program at the University of Adelaide, and has also served as a student mentor at the University of Adelaide Writing Centre. Our next panelist is Jenny Chow, who's a maths advisor at ACU, and she has over 15 years experience in the academic teaching and advising space in the area of biomedical sciences at Monash, University of Virginia, La Trobe, and ACU. So she has a breadth of experience there. Our next panelist is Ivana Domazetoska, who is a colleague of mine, I'm very happy to say. She's a full-time PhD candidate in linguistics at Uni Melbourne, and she's in her second year working as an academic skills advisor at the university. And what her bio admits to say, which is what she sent me, is that she went from the trajectory of being an international student to a student partner with us, and then to a full student academic skills advisor with us. So she'll have a lot to share about the student advisor space. Our next panelist I'm really happy to represent is another colleague of mine at Uni Melbourne, is Dr. Victoria Roberts, although I call her Vicky because that's how she signs off on her emails. She's a lecturer in the Department of Management and Marketing, and she conducts research in the organisation management of sport. And so Vicky teaches management related subjects, including organisational behaviour, one of the biggest subjects in that department, and business ethics. Finally, our last member of the panel is Lara Stollery, who's a third year health and medical sciences student majoring in public health, also at the University of Adelaide, and she's an undergraduate representative on the School of Public Health board. So we really do have a really nice representative panel of a range of different areas, and I'm really keen to hear from them. So first, my first question will be, I'll ask, is Felicia here? Is she here? I can't hear from her, so I'm assuming she's not. Tiana, I might get you to chase Felicia up if you wouldn't mind. Jenny, can you tell us how your role in advising and how you came to it?
Hi everyone, I'm Jenny. I'm a maths advisor at ACU. I actually started doing demonstration for biology at ACU at the beginning, and then a colleague of mine said, "Oh, we've got a job opening for the academic skills unit, helping a student with maths." So I thought I needed a change by then, so I gave it a go, did the interview, and I got the job. That's how I got here.
Great, fantastic. And as we were talking about before, with Debbie's SIG group, is that, you know, I guess by a long way that the academic advising context deals with non-maths areas, but it's great to have the numeracy space involved in this context, and for us to recognise that that's a very key part of the space. So thanks, Jenny.
Thanks.
Yeah, Ivana, how about you? Tell us about your role in advising and how you came to it.
Thanks, Steve. Well, this is my second year, as you said, and I first came into this role. Well, initially I started off as student partner in early 2021. And I was working up close with you, Steve, on designing a few videos for academic skills about, I remember how to improve your English, and then some writing tips. And I had literally the best time, the best experience. And then a few months after, Guido, who's in this room, big shout out to Guido, reached out to me asking if I'd be interested to join the team, because I was just finishing my master's degree in linguistics and I was ecstatic to do so. So I've been here ever since.
Fantastic. And Guido was with us at UniMel before ACU gained him as their manager. So Guido was instrumental in bringing Ivana onto our team. And again, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, for those of you who are as old as me know what a record is, that trajectory that Ivana has gone through, I think, is very impressive and worth acknowledging. International student to student partner, making videos to academic skills advisor. So yeah, Vicky, I'm not sure if academic advising is what you do as a lecturer, but you certainly have experience in advising people academically. So would love to hear how you sort of came to that, being interested in this space and your role in it.
Thanks, Stephen. Thank you for having me here. Yes, I feel like I am indirectly an academic advisor, an academic student advisor, because in my role as subject coordinator and as head tutor in organizational behavior, which is a compulsory undergraduate subject in the Bachelor of Commerce. So we have approximately 2,000 students take this subject every year, and a team of up to 20 tutors. I have worked very closely with academic skills advisors in Melbourne University, and in particular Morag Burney, and she has been instrumental in being able to embed academic skill advising and also exercises and as a forms of scaffolding into our whole program and our course. And so that's one way I feel like I have been in that role, but also through the role of mentoring, guiding, and leading a team of tutors who in effect also have to enact that role of academic skills advisors in many respects. What we see is a great deal of the confidence and from quite frankly well-being of the students, let alone their success as students, comes from their capacities in academic skills. It is a fundamental skill in their development. Without it, they can't thrive in this subject. And so the role that the tutors play in being able to bridge the gaps in understanding, also be able to potentially facilitate the student being able to reach out to gain one-on-one, not just necessarily between tutor and student, but also academic skills advisor and student, is also really important. So I am a huge advocate of academic skills and see it playing a very fundamental role in student health, well-being, and academic performance.
I think I speak for the room, Victoria, when I say your comments are like music to a symphony to our ears, because to hear academics fully invested in what we do is wonderful. It's great. It just makes the job of collaboration and achievement and getting positive outcomes so much easier when and so much more successful when the lecturers, the tutors, the academic staff see us as being of great synergy with what you do. So,
and may I even take it further, that I actually see it as a strategic from the university's perspective in being able to funding academic skills and the network of academic skills advisors that you have in the university. I think that, and to use that strategically. So, for example, when you have such an a great disparity between number of students and smaller number of staff, if you can't find ways to leverage the skills of academic skills advisors and embed them into the course infrastructure, if you like, then I think you're going to be at a great disadvantage, especially when you've got large classes like organizational behavior.
Oh, I agree. Again, I don't think you'd find anyone in the room who would disagree with you. I think it's great to hear those ideas. Fantastic, thanks, Vicky. Lara, tell us about your role, how you came to it.
So hi, I'm Lara Stollery, a student at the University of Adelaide, and I came to find myself with a wonderful family of academic advisors because I have dyslexia, so needed additional help with academic writing, which is not a skill set that was embedded in me as an incredibly challenging thing to adopt. And when you go back into university as a mature age student, you just make this assumption that your time in the workplace will prepare you and you'll be fine for this kind of writing skill set, but it's incredibly hard and you need so much support to see you be successful. So I've been very fortunate in having an incredible team of people to guide me and help me be very successful.
Excellent. Again, great to hear. And it's always good to hear of the positive difference that people make and bring to students of all ranges and needs. That's brilliant. Thanks, Lara. I see that Felicia has joined us. Felicia, can you, the question is, tell us about your role or your association with advising and how you came to it.
Hi, I'm Felicia. I'm a student at the University of Adelaide. I'm a peer-assisted student sessions leader, so that's PASS, and I was also a Writing Centre student mentor. I came through, I guess, with the Writing Centre, I came to it as a student who used the service myself, and I saw the value and I wanted to impart that and sort of share that with my fellow students. And as a PASS leader, I was luckily invited by an academic advisor who thought that I would find value in the program and that I had the enthusiasm for, I guess, that type of support. Excellent.
And it's a type of advising too, obviously working in a writing centre. So I'm sure you've got some good positive stories to share, which is where I would like to start with this is, and again, continuing on Rebecca's theme of optimism, and she had the breakout room sharing a cause for optimism or something that's been positive in your area at the this year maybe. So I'm going to ask our panelists to, and you can think of this while I'm talking, what's a positive thing? Just what's a story you've got that's highlights the positive impact that advising can make. And while you're thinking, I'll share one of my own. And I know we don't always, we don't like to think of our work as always operating in the deficit space, but the one really positive story I had of this year of a student who booked an academic skills as a sort of a Hail Mary pass. She hadn't thought of using academic skills before. It was an international student in nursing, and she booked a session to go over her paper, which she had feedback before she was going to submit it, that it wasn't up to scratch at all. And I looked at it with her and it wasn't. And I was able to go through with her over the space of a couple of sessions as to what was wrong with it. She submitted and passed really well, and in a couple of sessions with me she was crying, wondering if she would continue with the program. It wasn't what she expected. It was hard. She didn't know what to do. She didn't know what was expected, and via a bit of one-to-one care and intervention, we were able to turn her around. And she emailed me recently saying that she'd passed, she's staying in the program. And it was just one of those things where you think, wow, great, that intervention made an obvious, clear difference. So it doesn't have to be a story like that, but it's just an idea of something positive that happened. Ivana, how about you? Do you want to kick it off?
Yes, thank you, Steve. That's fantastic hearing your story, and I can relate and add on to that because I feel like so many students, especially as a result of the pandemic, we're still sort of getting out of, they've been feeling sort of emotionally vulnerable. And so when they come to these one-on-one appointments, we need to take that into consideration, and that's quite obvious. And I as well was recently working with this semester with a more mature student that was overwhelmed not only by the workload. She was a master's in education student and overwhelmed by the workload. On top of it, her personal life. So she was basically, and professional life, so torn in all these different places. And I remember in the beginning that there was a bit of sort of emotional vulnerability where she thought there's no way she could get past confirmation for her master's, and she was really confused about the process of structuring her confirmation report, which can be quite overwhelming. That's still a big project, and it takes a lot of effort. So over a couple of sessions, we've been able to work those things out, work those things through, and I like what Rebecca said in the beginning, demystifying the process of what the requirements are and what is expected. So I think that's exactly what we've been doing, demystifying that process that seems so daunting. And she recently emailed, said she passed confirmation, so that is absolutely fantastic. And I remember where we were at the beginning with this feeling of, I would say, desperation, and now this wonderful thing has happened for her, and it's a great milestone. So it just goes to show what the one-on-one service can do for all students.
Hey, you can't sleep in there.
Steve, I don't think can everybody hear Steve, or is it me?
No, I can't hear Steve either.
Yes, I think we've lost Steve.
These damn headphones.
I see her.
They have a button on this part which doesn't tell you when the mute's on. I'm so sorry. I just Guido, it's your fault. This is the ones you bought. I was just picking up on the word vulnerability, that our students do come to us quite often in a vulnerable situation and looking, quite often they're high-flying students who are not used to seeking help. So they are very vulnerable. So Vicky, I'd like to get your take on that too. Just that, well, maybe not the vulnerability part, but you can talk about that if you like, but it's that positive story that you can share in your space.
So I'd like to share two examples. One, which is the example of how we can work as an academic skills advisor indirectly. And so this is the way in which I worked with Morag Burney to be able to establish a scaffolding activity within a team assignment. This is a 30% assignment which is a group assignment that commences in week 3 and ends in week 10. And the second example I'd like to give is an example of a one-on-one, but again, this is through between tutor and student, and where the tutor has actually developed skills by working through workshops that we've organised amongst the tutor team with an academic skills advisor. So the first example of the scaffolding. So this is, it does actually build on Ivana's example of point about the development of your skill of structuring the work. We find that in the group assignments, which is a report where the group of students are required to do a case analysis followed by recommendations. It's 5,000 words. That often the work was presented ill-structured, and they weren't really able to showcase their analytic work and their capacity to derive recommendations from their analysis through their work. And so in week 7, so this was just over the halfway point of the group assignment, we required all students to complete in their groups a structured plan. There was actually a template in which we provided the students, so it was highly guided, highly activity, and to the point where we actually even put prompts in terms of what we were expecting at different stages. Then we actually provided students with high-level feedback on that. So if we saw that the students, in terms of their capacity to understand what it means to structure their arguments, what it means to actually present a coherent and well-structured report, then they would actually get feedback on that and could improve on that before then submitting the final assignment. And the feedback that we have from the tutors is that this has increased the quality of the work, generally speaking. The other example I wanted to give was really, I guess, illustrates again the point of the vulnerability, and particularly of the cohorts of international students that do not have an extended community or network here in Australia. Often it's also a highly vulnerable group, which is men aged between 19 and 24. And in this case, where after receiving their results for the individual assignment in organizational behavior, and that often presents a really challenging time when they're trying to understand where they could actually, how they could improve their marks. And these students are often high achieving. They find organizational behavior particularly challenging because it's a maths dominated degree, and this is a story that was shared to me by from a tutor who was explaining that this student was expressing concerns. She was actually concerned about the mental health of the student, and we went through a process of escalating that as well. But what the student actually needed was one-on-one time to support them in improving their work for the next assignment. And so this was directly related to academic skills. The student said something along the lines to the tutor of, if I don't improve this marks, I don't know if there's going to be another opportunity. And to her credit, the tutor said, okay, well, let's make sure that we do better. So she understood that her role was in this situation, that she wasn't a trained counsellor. She was remaining in role as a tutor, focusing on her expertise in academic skills advising, and she focused on building on the extent to which she could contribute to that student's health and well-being by improving their confidence on their next assignment. So I hope that I was able to articulate that story and just demonstrate the essence of it, which is that one-on-one can be a catalyst for an individual to sort of then begin a positive trajectory in terms of their mental health.
Oh, I think they're two great examples, because the first one illustrates how you can make a difference to the group, and scaffolding the idea, scaffolding through to the whole group, and that feed up idea of trying to ensure good outcomes before they start, and then being responsive to a student who is demonstrating need. Again, I think it shows that we can respond at the institutional level, and the reputation that the university has for not taking care of their students isn't founded, because we do. So thanks Vicky, that's really illustrative. Felicia, how about you? So a positive story that you can share from your space.
Well, one of the most positive experiences that has remained with me was sort of similar to what Troy was just talking about, just helping a student who was a bit in crisis. So they had missed deadlines. It was the end of the semester. So I was a past leader for a core course for Bachelor of Arts, which no longer runs right now, but it was a course that pretty much a majority of the students who were taking Bachelor of Arts had to go through. And that meant that there were a lot of students in that course who sometimes didn't feel academically confident or didn't understand the skills that course was meant to impart. Core research and learning skills. That was the aim of this course. So they had missed the deadline, and they were basically at that point saying, hey, I think I'm just going to fail this semester, or I'm a bit intimidated. And they just felt very down. And as a student myself who has been in similar situations, I thought it was a fantastic opportunity to teach them about advocating for themselves. So for me, I think an academic and learning skill set that sometimes a lot of students don't have or need, I think, one-on-one support is that confidence to advocate for themselves. So in that session, I actually sat down with them and said, hey, there's actually a means for you to email your course coordinator, explain your situation, ask for an extension, or just say, hey, I have missed the deadline. Is there anything else that I can do to, I guess, pass the course? So I think a lot of the positive experiences that have stayed with me has been reinforcing their skill set to be, I guess, independent learners with self-efficacy that allows them to sort of move forward with confidence in their academic abilities beyond just, meeting the requirements for an assessment and getting the right grades, but just being a well-rounded learner.
Oh, I think that's so important. I'm really happy you said that, because we as advisors often, well, I speak for myself, not for everybody, but that idea of advocacy is super important. We get, I guess, caught up in thinking, how can I help you, as opposed to how can you help yourself? And I was just working with a student who had failed a subject. She found out yesterday, she failed by 2 points and wanted to know what she could do. And I said, have you spoken to your tutor? And she said, no. Okay, that's your first port of call. So that thing of self-advocacy we talked about. Yeah, so I'm really happy you talked about that. Jenny, how about you? Thanks, Felicia.
It's really good to hear all these stories. At ACU, we, especially for maths, we help a lot of students who come to get assistance on drug calculations and land-type numeracy. And I guess the best moments is when the student turn up with flowers and chocolate saying that they passed the test. Also screaming emails that says I passed the test and that was the end of the email, there's nothing else. So I think those moments really make you think that you've made a difference. But also what's really significant for me are the other appointments where you don't really hear from them what's the impact afterwards. So often students that only come once perhaps, but those I like to think that perhaps a bit more like Felicia said, is that self-efficacy. Like in that 30 minutes, how could I make sure that they know how to fish themselves rather than me feeding them the fish all the time? But it could also be that perhaps in that 30 minutes, I didn't really help them with anything and that's why they don't come back or whatever. But with that, I like to think, what could I have done better next time? So either way, there's always some positivity that I give myself, no matter what the appointment's impact or the result is. So yeah, that's my
great.
sharing.
Good thing to remember, that we always need to take some aspect of confidence for ourselves as well as, or positivity for ourselves as well as the student. Yeah, got to keep reminding ourselves of that. And Brendan, I think it was Brendan Hall on the chat, talked about us perhaps being called academic confidence advisors. And I know he's sort of joking, but it's got a lot of ring of truth to it, that we are often in the game or the business of building up confidence and getting people, as Felicia said, to advocate for themselves and have the confidence to have their own skills and run with them, as you've both said. Thanks, Jenny. Lara, how about you? Good news story from you, or a positive?
Oh, so many. See, my academic advisors have been very vulnerable with me, which has allowed me to in turn do the same back, because when I was going through tertiary education, I had no examples of people who were neurodivergent doing big things, and I was never expected to be successful. So passing was just what I did. And seeing people who are doing PhDs or hold PhDs who have various learning challenges has just been so incredible for me. And the fact that having their support has allowed me to get high distinctions and distinctions in writing, something that I never, ever thought that I could do. And the power of achieving those grades and having that continuous support and network behind you is just completely invaluable. And the fact that my university is supporting me to achieve big things makes me want to continue to stay there and go further and further on with my education. It's incredible what you all do.
Wow, it's great. Again, as I said to Vicky in her opening comments, I don't think you find anyone in the room. I think you're you know, speaking to the converted on this, so it's brilliant to hear that it does make a clear difference, and that for people, I guess not only in vulnerable states, but in any state that they come to use the service, can get something out of it, and that the service has ongoing backwash into what they're doing. I think that's fantastic. I think all of us really do need to hear these things, because as Rebecca pointed out in her keynote, that, you know, it's the end of the year. It's the end of, I don't think just the end of a long year, it's the end of a long 3 years that we've been wearing headphones and looking at Zoom people. You know, it's not just 1 year, it's been 36 months of this, and we're all a bit tired, and we do need to hear these messages. They're really important for us to know that we're, you know, on the right track and hitting the right mark. So I think it's important. Rebecca also said through chat that notion of demystification of culture is a big one in student advocacy, and you sort of talking about that as well, Lara, that, you know, it's saying to people who have found themselves in situations like yours that you can do it, absolutely can do it, and not only can do it, you can do it successfully. So I'll stay with you, Lara, just for a minute. Then why do you think this one-to-one system works then? Why does advising, from a student's perspective, why do you think it works? What's the thing that empowers it?
It's really building up those fundamental relationships, and it removes a lot of barriers, because sometimes in class, students can feel really vulnerable and being judged by others around them for what they say or what they get wrong. But having that one-to-one relationship, it is so special and so integral in building your confidence and allowing you to go forth and practice that relationship with another teacher or another professor and get more and more confident within yourself. And it's a hard skill set to build, and you need to constantly keep working on it.
Yeah, true. Okay, so again, it's the advocacy thing and the confidence building, which seems to be a theme
Huge.
coming through. Okay, Felicia, why do you think the one-to-one works, or that idea of having someone to advise you personally?
Yeah. Well, I've been a student up until recently who has actually used academic advising throughout my entire degree, as well as being an academic student advisor throughout most of my degree. So from both of those perspectives, I would say, I guess it works because it really allows you to delve into the specific, like the individual specific issues or areas that you want to cover. Personally, I'd say some of the most refined writing and learning skills that I have gained myself as a student have been from academic advising. And I've been able to take that into the classes and build onto that through my tutors, etc. But where I develop them and where I'm actually confident in trialing and the error has been in academic advising. So yeah, it does kind of create that safe space, but it also creates a chance for the student sometimes in a way to lead their own learning. You go to an academic advisor and you say, hey, these are my issues, or this is an area that I enjoy and I want to get better in. And I think we had mentioned earlier with that ratio of students versus, you know, a tutor, that sometimes isn't very possible in a classroom setting or a tutorial setting. So I think that's fantastic. And I love still myself to go and get academic advising sessions at the University of Adelaide. We have the Writing Center, which is very useful. As an advisor myself, I would say, I guess, yeah, pretty similar to myself. I guess it's that it's a safe space to be able to say, hey, I'm having this issue and I don't understand it the first time or the second time, sometimes not even the third time, and just being able to revisit it over and over again. one major thing that I learned in my training to become an academic advisor is different types of learning, different styles of learning. I think sometimes that's not necessarily out of neglect, but it's not necessarily catered for all the different types of learning, whilst in academic advising, you kind of get to delve into that. Some people are auditory learners, some people are kinetic learners, some people are visual learners. And we, myself as a past leader, we got training to actually be able to provide for that. And I could see its use coming through, and there was a lot of, I think, a lot of a sense of, it's not that I can't learn, it's just that I learn differently. That came through in a lot of my sessions. And I think that that's probably one of the greatest values or impacts that academic advising has.
Yeah. And I guess speaking to the different ways people have of learning is, I think, the great acknowledgement of neurodiversity and diversity within students. I think we've had probably a bit of a narrow view of that in the past. And I'm really happy to say I think that view has broadened a lot to understand in a way greater sense of what diversity and neurodiversity means, and what that profile of student is, and what they mean in the learning situation. So Vicky, I'll throw to you. Why do you think it works? Why do you, and again, from the academic sense, not just in the academic advisor sense, but the academic sense, why does that assistance, advising, contact help?
I loved hearing both of your experiences then about the one-on-one and the importance of relationships. Unfortunately, when you've got a huge ratio, you've got to work out other ways. And the other way that I really wanted to share, the other positive story, is when we actually get our academic student advisor presenting every semester, week 2, to our students. It was originally in face-to-face, but obviously now it's on Zoom. And the way that I think, obviously, both Lara and Felicia have talked about the relationship building, but another important part of that one-on-one is that you could talk, you had a specific piece of work that the student needed help with. So how we are able to at least achieve that, given the huge ratio, we have an individual assignment, and the academic skills advisor will speak directly to that individual assignment. And so we provide them specifically with skills around unpacking that question. We give them skills specifically around structuring the response given the question and the expectations of the assignment. And so at least we're able to tailor the academic skills development specifically to what every student has to do. It's a 10% assignment. And then we obviously we also include another colleague from the library, a library liaison officer, so they also develop skills for the students in terms of using databases and being able to conduct research. So we provide it sort of as a holistic approach to providing them with skills, generally speaking, on that individual assignment. And then afterwards, we really emphasize that those skills of going through the process of writing as well, from brainstorming right the way through to edit and final proofreading, can then be replicated in a group writing process as well.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the library, because it's an area that Uni Melbourne's really made a lot of concerted and clear strides in, is the combination or the co-delivery of skills development from academic skills with the library. So it's great you mentioned that. Jenny, there you are. How about you? Same question. Why does it work?
Why does it work? For me, it worked because once they've come to the consultation, they worked out that I'm not really a lecturer or a tutor or someone who's higher up, I think. And, you know, when that's broken down, then they are more opened up, you know, to share, you know, why is learning hard? Why is this making it hard? Why can't I learn this? You know, can you give me some strategies, you know, rather than, I guess if I was someone who's like a lecturer and all that, it makes them feel like they're refilling some inabilities or some insufficiencies that they're less likely to share. with people. I think that having this sort of on the same level sharing, it's what really helped. Yeah, and they probably worked out that I'm not that good at maths either, and that really helped because you you completely understand why you can't do something all of a sudden, and what are some of the ways that can help you learn something in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it speaks again of I think Lara talked about it, the vulnerability of the advisor. You're not presenting yourself as a know-all or an expert, and you understand their difficulties. Yeah. So it's that empathy thing, I think. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jenny. Ivana, let's hear from you. Why does it work, Ivana?
I will build on everything, and I actually feel the same way. I think it's that safe space, and I'll use Felicia's words verbatim. It's that safe space because it neutralizes that environment. So they're not coming from a point of, inferiority or lack. It's a neutral environment. They can safely express their concerns without feeling judged or without feeling that they're showing some sort of lack of knowledge or lack of understanding. As a student, I found myself most embarrassed about being confused about what I don't know. So I don't know what I don't know, therefore I can't ask questions. In our sessions, as in the academic advising sessions, it's perfectly fine to not know what you don't know. You can start off from that, most confused point, and we can disentangle all these things together through discussion, asking questions, and sort of building on that. So it's perfectly fine, no matter how confused the student feels. From that point, we get to a point where things become more clear and more organized, not necessarily in one session, but in a couple of sessions, multiple sessions, which is why it's important to nurture that sort of relationship between the advisors and the students, but also showing the students how they can do these things themselves in the future.
Yeah. I'm sort of grinning because I'm reading the vulnerability confessions on chat. I think, Alice, I speak for most of us when I say that we're all pretty ordinary students in the first 2 years. I know I was. I learned most of my tricks of the trade at master's level. Thanks, Ivana. I'll stay with you, actually, Ivana. We'll flip it a bit. What do you think doesn't work? What negative spaces are you aware of not going into in the advising situation?
That's fantastic. So first of all, doesn't work having prior assumptions as an advisor. You go into the session and you ask questions. That's the one thing I always do. It's happened to me a few times that I would ask a question or two, and then a student would answer, and then I see some sort of pattern that I've experienced with some other students, and then I go on and give that approach, and then I realize, oh no, this is not what they're looking for, or not working for them, or they have a different way of doing it, or different understanding, and then I had to retract myself. So ask as many questions, do not have any assumptions. I think that's the first thing. And as well, what does not work is also being, how to say this, axiomatic, if that makes sense, to give a student some sort of strategy or something that must work because it's worked for 100 people. It's definitely going to work for you. So that's a big no-no. I think it's important to listen to the students carefully, where they're coming from, and try to sort of show them that they can work within their strengths and use their strengths and their inclinations and their dispositions to approach this assignment and to make this an H1 sort of assignment. It doesn't necessarily have to be the way that most of the students are doing it. They can have their own way of approaching it and doing it. We're just there to support them and provide them with the other tools that are necessary to do it. So not to be assertive and not to be overly assertive in terms of the advice we give or the strategies, and as well not to have too many assumptions prior. So those are the two things I'm avoiding at all costs.
Okay, fantastic. Vicky, I might throw to you next because I know you have to leave a couple minutes early out of the space. So just that thing of, the negative space or what to avoid. And for the rest of you, we'll have some Q&A in a few minutes. So just think of any questions you might have for the panel.
I'm not 100% certain how this recommendation or this issue can always be avoided. It's when you have a certain situation, for example, where a student is interested in reviewing their exams and seeking feedback, and when it's structured as an opportunity or presented as an opportunity to request remarking or basically to gain further marks. So it's being able to create spaces as a learning environment, I guess, as opposed to an instrumental environment in which we're setting up students to be more instrumental in their approach. So I guess just what I'm saying is being able to, again, when you've got such large student cohorts, presenting opportunities such as looking at exam scripts and unpacking what they've done well from an academic skills perspective as an opportunity for learning, and making it very clear that this is not akin to an opportunity to gain marks. I know I'm being quite I hope that that's received in the spirit in which I'm saying it. It's to ensure that we continue the focus on learning as opposed to doing work to merely improve marks.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Again, I don't think there's many people who disagree with you on that one. It's are you seeking learning, or are you looking to get a 76 go up to a 78 type thing? Yeah. And that's one of the reasons, hard and fast rule in our space is never to deal in marks. I know you operating a different space, absolutely you are, but in the advising space, we never go, we don't go there. Thanks, Vicky. If you need to go, thanks for coming. I'll say it now before you have to duck out.
Thank you, and to all of you, thank you very much for the work you do for students, and also the skills that you develop for us as academics. I dearly love the work, love Morag and the work that she's done for our team. So I'm sure that you do also fantastic work for your academics and your students too. Thank you, Steve, for having me.
Wonderful. Thanks, Vicky. You'll be very happy to know that Morag has just given birth to her second baby on Monday.
Wow. Okay.
Share it with everybody who doesn't know Morag, but there you go.
Okay. Beautiful.
Just for you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Thanks, Vicky. Lara or Felicia or Jenny, what doesn't work, or the things that you try to avoid? Anything before we throw open to the wider room?
I guess I'll echo what Ivana and Vicky just said. So Ivana about not being too assertive, and I guess Vicky in a way talking about it not being necessarily a space to reteach. We do sort of have to remember that we're advisees, and one of the key things that I picked up when I first started advising is that we're not teaching, but we are sort of facilitating, and the aim is to, as I mentioned earlier, to enable self-efficacy and give them the skills that they need to be as independent learners moving forward in life. So there's this thing that I heard from one of my physios once, who said, we're doing this so that you don't, eventually at one point in the road, you don't need me anymore. So I guess that's kind of the philosophy that I take in my head. So always making sure that we're not reteaching, we're not telling, we're not being too assertive and saying this is the way to do it. We are redirecting and sort of helping them navigate their skills and build their skills so that they can eventually go on themselves as independent learners. So I think that's probably the key thing is I guess that's the defining thing for me, what academic advising is, and in a way that kind of tells me what doesn't work from there. So I work from there and I'm like, okay, this is what doesn't work.
Yeah, okay. Brilliant. I think that a whole idea of oh god, sorry, I just had a mental block because I was reading Anna Potterover's comment about marks. Sorry, Felicia, I do agree with everything you just said. I can't remember what I was going to say though. I'm so sorry. Lara or Jenny, anything to add?
So I can only come at it from a student perspective, and what doesn't work would be the underfunding of such a valuable service, especially in the critical times where appointments get taken up, where everyone seems to have assignments due and you can't get in to see learning advisors, and they are so critical in the support of being the best student you can be. And I don't feel like it's valued as much by the hierarchy, putting more funding into a service that is essentially keeping students in their degree pathways and furthering them through past just a bachelor's.
Absolutely, the whole retention narrative is super important. Yeah, I'm not sure if people saw Anna Potterover's message about marks. I didn't mean to imply that marks weren't important to us, because they certainly are important to the students. It's just that we don't engage in discussions of what we think a paper should get in terms of the marks we think it might get. Even if we think it's a H1 or a fail, we won't be saying things like that. So, okay, I'm going to throw this open to the floor. I know we've had a really long and robust comment list in chat, but are there any questions anybody has for any of our panel? Emma, go ahead.
Yeah, this is something that I asked the other people in our breakout room, but wearing two hats as both a teaching academic and as a part-time learning advisor, I find it very easy to transfer the skills and knowledge that I get as a learning advisor into my practice as a teacher around course design and assessment design, instructions, that sort of thing. But I'm very aware that this is not universally the case across teaching institutions. So I'd be really interested to hear from the panelists about how they can see learning advisors, both in sort of big picture conceptual senses, but also in practical boots on ground ways of getting that knowledge from the learning advisor silos into the other teaching that's happening at their institutions, because I reckon at least half of the students I see at the Writing Centre probably wouldn't have to come and see me if the person who designed the course that they're taking knew the things that learning advisors knew. So how can we facilitate that knowledge transfer, essentially?
It'd be great if Vicky was still here to give an academic response to that, but I've got a response myself, but I'd love to hear from the panel. No? Okay. Emma, for me, I think the answer lies in embedding. I think the more that we embed into programs, the more we can talk with our academic champions and collaborators about what academic skills mean to us, why we think they're important, and how to enact them in a very real, not an adjunct space, but an embedded, almost co-design space with them. So I think the more we can do that, it means that the more they get to understand what we do and how it synthesizes what they do, not separate to what they do. It's part of what they do, and they can learn those skills along, sometimes with their students. You do workshops, and I always insist that the academic's present for the workshop. And because sometimes they say, do you want me there? I'm like, yeah, you need to be there. And when you hit those key points, have resonance, you see them nodding their heads as if, oh yeah, right, that's a good point. So that to me, I'm not sure if that answers your question, Emma, but that to me is a sort of fundamental area.
Yeah, I do like that, running workshops into courses. And that's actually how I met Rebecca, because she was running workshops into the course that I was coordinating, which is what got me into this whole thing in the first place. Right. But do you have any examples of, I guess, more sort of systemic ways of doing that embedding, other than just let's drop a workshop into this course or a module into this online presence?
Certainly in curriculum design, if you can get in that space, that is the sort of gold standard. We can't often get in there though, because we might not be invited. They might not think to invite us to that. But if you can also get into staff PD sessions, and we've been able to get into a couple of areas, for example, in MDHS and education and engineering, where we're involved in staff training and incorporating academic skills in that space and awareness of it, what it means and what it means for them as academics, that has a lot of resonance too, I think. I'll be happy to hear from anyone else. I don't want to just be me giving the answers here. I know there are a lot of people with a lot of knowledge in this space.
Is it okay if I speak?
Yeah, Renee, go ahead.
Renee, yeah, hey, I'm not sure how many of your screen you can see, how many of us you can see. I had an amazing opportunity recently to sit in on a day-long whole campus course planning session, which I weaseled my way into. And what I had the opportunity to do is come at the course developers and at the course coordinators from an angle of, what are you seeing students struggle with? What assignments are you seeing where you're disappointed that the students missed the point? Where are their weaknesses and where are their strengths? Because the more you feed back to me as a learning advisor, the more I can develop something very targeted for your particular student needs or your particular assignment, and embed it in your course or create resources that will help. And I think the more that we do that, the more that we will be valued, because it's directed, targeted results that they can see. And even the reduction in headaches for the markers has got to feed in some positive way to the value of us.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I find the other thing which has a lot of payoff is talking to staff about their part of it, because this is not all just about student development and student problems and fixing those areas. It's about looking at their documents. Does your task brief make sense? Is your rubric workable? Can students pick up an assignment task and understand it? Or is it a 7-page thing which is longer than the assignment itself? You know, I often talk about it as the golden rule of task briefs: don't make them longer than the assignment. And the academics all laugh. I'm like, don't laugh. You guys do it all the time. So yeah, I think there's two sides of that we need to think about. Thanks, Renee. And there's some really interesting, good comments in chat about relationship management, and Mark talking about faculty ambassadors at ACU, which are embedded in major schools, and Manuel Jantos talks about embedding and opening conversation lines with academics and course coordinators, which I think we all think is the vital role this all plays. I'm mindful of the fact we're at 5 o'clock, and I had a long list of questions to ask our panel and got through about 3 or 4 of them, because the answers they gave were so fantastic and comprehensive. Can you all join me in just giving a clap and a thank you or a thumbs up to our panel? Felicia, beg your pardon, Jenny, Ivana, Vicky, who's gone, and Lara, who have been really kind enough to give us their time and share some fantastic thoughts with us. I'll finish by saying thank you. We had I think a peak attendance of about 104 today, which is brilliant. That's been our biggest attendance at any PD session we've run this year. So thank you very much for coming. Really, really appreciate you being here. I'll reiterate, we're going to put out a call for a topic call and a presenter call. Might ask a couple of our panelists to come back and present to us next year at CIS, Connect, Inspire, Share. That'd be great. So we'll be putting that out in the new year. But everyone, thank you for coming. If you were at the AGM too, it's been a long afternoon, so we'll let you go.